Funding for Governor's Perspectives with Kent Manahan has been provided by NJM Insurance Group, serving the insurance needs of residents and businesses for more than 100 years. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, committed to helping Americans lead healthier lives and get the care they need. Seton Hall University, Seton Hall School of Law, and by Connell Foley, LLP.
Welcome back to Governor's Perspectives. I'm Kent Manahan. For more than a decade, I've been interviewing New Jersey's current and former governors, getting their views and perspectives on issues that impact all of our lives in this state. As chief executives elected by the people, they have a unique understanding of what it takes to lead one of the wealthiest, most diverse, and most densely populated states in the nation. That leadership comes with a great deal of power, as laid out in New Jersey's 1947 Constitution. 2023 marks the 75th anniversary of the signing into law of that document in 1948. In this program, we'll explore those gubernatorial powers and how they evolve through 3 state constitutions with 2 former governors. But first, here's an excerpt from a public television Emmy Award-winning documentary that lays out those extraordinary powers.
The people who wrote the New Jersey Constitution were very suspicious of strong authority from an executive because they were fighting the King of England at that time. So the Constitution of 1776 gave the governor only a 1-year term, and the governor was not elected by the people. The governor was elected by the legislature. He was really a creature of the legislature. That was about the weakest governorship you can imagine.
For over 100 years in New Jersey, from the 1844 Constitution to the 1947 Constitution, we probably had arguably one of the weakest governors in the country. You served a 3-year term, you couldn't run for re-election, the legislature had almost all the appointments that you could possibly make, the governor made almost none. It was like a figurehead.
A governor could only serve 1 term. He could serve another one, but it could not be consecutive. So right from the start, the governor was a lame duck.
They had 3 years to get it done. If you could outlast the 3 years because you disagreed with the governor, you were still there, the governor was gone.
You almost wonder why somebody became the governor of New Jersey. I think because it had some stature and it didn't have much responsibility.
No one constitutional power makes the 1947 governor distinctly powerful. It's the combination of powers that the framers bestowed on the office that sets the governor in Trenton apart. First, the framers gave the governor a chance to serve 2 consecutive 4-year terms, just like the U.S. president. Next, they made the governor the only office elected by all the people of the state.
The governor is the only statewide elected official sitting in Trenton. Now, a couple years ago, New Jersey passed an amendment to the Constitution, so we have a lieutenant governor elected as well. But even that person runs on a ticket. They don't run independently.
So there's no competitors on a statewide basis. No attorney general, no treasurer, no insurance commissioner, things of that sort. People who are elected in other states. So that focal point is on the governor.
Other governors would just shake their heads. So you get to appoint all those people? Boy, I wish I had that power.
In most states, roughly about 2/3 of them, you have potential political rivals for the governor.
That doesn't happen in New Jersey. There's one person who is elected by everybody from Cape May to Mahwah. There's one person who can therefore command the attention of everybody statewide. That's the governor.
Until we elected a lieutenant governor, there was no important power in the state which wasn't appointed by one person, the governor of New Jersey. I don't know of any other states where that's true.
In times such as these, which are very rapidly complex changing times, when you need transformational change, it has to come from the governor. And if it doesn't come, then you have a void.
The governor is the leader, and that's the possibility and the problem. When you've got a state where the governor is so powerful, and so much more powerful than anybody else, you've got to have good governors. You've got to have a governor who will make use of those powers, who will unite the state, and do things to move the state forward.
With us now to discuss the power of the office they once held, that coveted office in New Jersey, former Governors Tom Kean and John Kourzine. Welcome back to the program, Governors. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to be here. Good to be with Tom.
Yeah.
Well, let me start with you, Governor Kean. In 1981, you were elected governor by the slimmest margin in state history. 4 years later, you were reelected by the largest plurality in state history.
Yeah.
Governor, from your experience, what should we know about the importance of the 1947 Constitution and the executive branch?
Vitally important. It made the New Jersey governorship the most powerful governorship in the entire country. I used to tell other governors what I could do, and their mouths would drop. And the Governors Association nicknamed me the Ayatollah Kean because I could do things they couldn't do.
I once read King Kean, I think you said they called you.
Yeah, because you just could do these things which other governors could only envy, and it made the New Jersey governorship a place where you could really get things done. And the legislature had to meet with you and negotiate with you because you had all this power.
Prior to 1947, Governor Kourzine, that governorship was not really sought after. It wasn't so coveted from what I've read in history. And we should point out that 1947 Constitution, we celebrate 75 years of that Constitution this year because it was enacted the year later in 1948. But prior to that time, the legislators were more the political clout in terms of governmental issues going on in Trenton.
Well, I'm no historian, but I'm under the impression that, or not under the impression, the term of a governor was 3 years and they couldn't succeed themselves. So you were fundamentally a lame duck before you even got started. And I think that allowed what exists in New Jersey, which is a wide fragmentation at the local level, for power to seep into the hands of power brokers, if you would. There's a guy named Frank Hague who was the Jersey City mayor that basically ran the state for about 30 years. I may be overstating it, but I don't think so. Basically picking governors. The Constitution did not give the authority, plus the way the legislature was allocated gave much more power to the local authorities. And so the 1947 constitutional allocation of authority really did make the governor of New Jersey really important. All the appointing powers, initiation powers, concentration of both finance and legal constraints in one offices, in the treasurer and the attorney general.
Legislators could basically just wait out the governor because the governor couldn't succeed himself or herself in that position. Governor, take us back to those political boss days in New Jersey, which were just mentioned. Frank Hague, Hudson County. He was very influential, of course, with the Democratic Party, but he was also, from what I've read, influential with the Republican Party.
He wasn't the only one. They had a guy called Hap Foley in Atlantic County for the Republicans, Hague for the Democrats in northern New Jersey and Jersey City. And they really dictated because they controlled enough legislators so that nothing got done unless they gave it the okay. And the reason we didn't reform anything earlier was because, among others, Frank Hague said no. There was a guy called Arthur Vanderbilt, who was our Chief Justice. And he was a scholar and a pretty tough proponent of changing the Constitution. But he just disliked Hague. He thought he was a crook and said so basically publicly, which didn't make Hague love him. And so Hague blocked everything Vanderbilt wanted to do. And actually, Governor Driscoll, I think, got Vanderbilt to go out of state for a while while they were doing the convention so that he and the two of them wouldn't go like this. But so Hague finally, that was one of Driscoll's jobs. He negotiated with Frank Hague to get the Constitution and get that thing done.
And Hague was willing to go along with it, apparently.
Well, with some some things he got on his side.
But he basically almost disappeared after that, or faded away in
he didn't
a
have
sense.
the power quite anymore after that. I mean, which he must have figured out, but maybe he's getting to the age where he didn't mind anymore.
There is some legacy, though, of political power at the local levels, regionally and in the counties, even today.
Does it limit the power of the governor in that sense? Because local rule is what...
Home rule is still a very, very important feature of both the 47 and pre-47 constitutions. So one of the topics that's actually being debated now is about when people go on the ballot, whether they get the line from the county committees and leaders, which is really a throwback to some of the old days of the Frank Hague years and other areas. And there's a real debate about it.
And that's a reform that should be done.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that county leaders can simply put who they want on the line.
Because voters look at that line.
Yeah, and they generally go along with who's on top of the line, and it means that the bosses have a way over influence on who's going to be nominated to be governor, for instance.
The correlation between getting the line and getting the nomination, if you have a high percentage of the counties, is close to 95%. I can't even recall anybody.
So some of that still lingers.
You didn't get the line?
No, and we overturned, I've been legislative leader and the Republicans are in control. We overturned the law for a while to allow me to get the nomination over the bosses. And I was the only one who did for 50 years or 60 years or something. And Brendan Byrne was governor, and he was fine with letting that part of the law go. And then they took it to court, and the court basically said, no, they've got a right to do that. So after I got elected, the court went back and they went back to the line again.
Let's talk about the powers of the governor's office. I mean, veto power. You can conditionally veto a state budget. The President of the United States can't do that with the federal budget.
One of the things we're able to do, which no other governor can do, we can veto the authority minutes. So it's something as powerful as a Port Authority of New Jersey and New York.
You can veto it.
We can stop it cold in its tracks, and I did. I vetoed the minutes. And the governor had done that before, and they got very upset. But this is a power that no other governor has in the country, to veto, particularly by state minutes of an authority. So you do that, you can change the budget, actually change the budget, which very few other governors can do.
You also have appointment power that very few other governors around the country have, and a lieutenant governor that is not elected like other states, but runs on the ticket. The governor decides who that person will be.
Well, maybe the most important consolidation of power is in the Attorney General and in the State Treasurer, because those are the two most important powers of how you operate. Now, and I'm sure Governor Kane operated in a way that gave the Attorney General independence, and I certainly think I did with the people that were in the office. But the idea that the Attorney General is an appointment of the governor is a very, very important power, and the Attorney General has responsibility over the county prosecutors. So it was a huge consolidation of power in the executive branch. And the same really goes for the state treasurer, where all of the resources are allocated and the budget is created, and that gives the governor a chance to put their policies in place.
Well, you speak of policy. As a reporter in this state covering politics for many, many years, I know the buck stops with the governor. It also starts with the governor in terms of policy. Policy comes out of the executive branch. Tell me, though, Governor Kane, was there a moment in time when you actually realized how much power you had? New in office, perhaps?
Yeah, there was one time. And I used a power that I wasn't sure I had. It was the state was being developed very, very fast because the economy was doing very well, and the wetlands were disappearing. And I got a bill through the Assembly to control the development of the wetlands, particularly down the shore, but they blocked it in the Senate, the lobbyists. And I put out an executive order under the governor's emergency powers, which said no development can go in the shore until there's a wetland protection bill. And the builders immediately went to court. And the court...
You were sued.
The court upheld it at me and said that, it said actually we'll consider it. Builders couldn't take it considering it because they were trying to make money. so they came into my office and said, what do you want? we give up.
How about you, Governor Kórzai? Was there kind of an aha moment?
There was a very clear one in my governorship. First budget I put together, Tom wouldn't have liked this, but I wanted to raise taxes. And the legislature was up for election in the following year, and they had no interest in signing off. We had a $4.5 billion gap that had to get closed, and it wasn't all going to come from cutting spending. And so we got to the end of the fiscal year, and we had to shut down government, and went on for 8 days. And I used the same power that Tom was talking about, the emergency power. I called the legislature into session for 8 consecutive days, each day with a new executive order. Went and gave a not so fancy speech. Get the budget done, and I'm not compromising. And ultimately, we got a package about 8 days. But it came because you had the executive authority that was granted in the Constitution to be able to draw leverage in the debates with the legislature on how you were going to shape a budget. And it was really important. And the guy who gave me the advice on that happened to be Stuart Rabner, who is now our Chief Justice. And I'm not a lawyer, so I walked around with Stuart hand in hand practically as I went through that whole process. But he pointed out how powerful the governor could be if you wanted to do it.
Was it difficult to take criticism? And by that I mean meeting the public, hearing their views, what they didn't like about you were doing, and also surrounding yourself with people who would tell you the truth, who would not always tell you what you wanted to hear, but would lay it out in the pros and cons. Was that tough to take, Governor?
No, it wasn't tough to take, but it's very important that you do surround yourself with the kind of people you're talking about who are going to give you the straight talk. I had 3 main people who reported to me directly, and they're all been friends of mine for 20, 30 years in some cases. And Gary Stein, who later went to the Supreme Court, and Kerry Edwards, my Attorney General, and Greg Stevens, who was my Chief of Staff. I'd all known them for years. They'd known me for years. So when they thought I was wrong, they had no problem coming to the office saying they were wrong because they'd known me long enough to do that.
Was the same for you?
Absolutely. Nobody does anything by themselves. You're responsible, but you're only as good as the people that you surround yourself. I mentioned Stuart Rabner, who was one of the finest minds and came out of a prosecutor's office in the U.S. Attorney's office. And one of the things we wanted to do was make sure we ran a clean administration. I thought, well, there isn't a better way to do that than have a fine mind and someone who had proven themselves in that area. The same went in other areas of government that we were involved with, but you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with.
Best job ever?
Yeah, probably.
Best job ever?
Absolutely. I gave up the United States Senate to be the governor because it was such an attractive place to be able to get the initiatives that you care about done.
Do governors tend to look to Washington to run for president? Is it kind of a natural next step?
Some of them do. It doesn't help their governorships.
In what way? It's distraction?
It's a very tough job being governor of New Jersey, and you've got to concentrate on the people of New Jersey and what you can do for them. If you start thinking what you're going to do down the road in Washington, then you start worrying about fundraising nationally, then you start worrying about what you do in the governorship, how it's going to affect the national campaign, and they're not good governors when that happens, and it's happened to people in both parties, and I just think there isn't a better job than being governor of New Jersey. And people ought to do that job. A couple of years later, after you finish that job, if you want to go look nationally, that's fine. But I never did, but some people do, and that's fine.
Is there a national bug, do you think, particularly in the Democratic Party?
First of all, I want to identify with what Tom said. It's a big job, and you have more elements of initiative in the New Jersey governorship than almost any place, probably any place in the country. But that also gets you to feeling that maybe if you learn how to do it here, you can do it there. But New Jerseyans don't like people taking their eye off the ball. We don't have a huge amount of press coverage in the state. We don't have a lot of television. I don't have to tell you this. And you need to have the bully pulpit of the governor working on New Jersey issues. I think it's very important, and people that do it well, I think, are rewarded. Then they can take on those national challenges.
Move on possibly to Washington.
But I'll repeat what I said before. I chose to come from Washington to this job because it was such a unbelievably powerful ability to accomplish the things that you believe in.
Let me just, in the few minutes we have left, turn your attention to the legislative races and just get your reaction. What happened? The Republicans didn't do that well. The Democrats did in this election.
Well, there are a couple of things. I think there was a national trend going on, which I don't think anybody saw, that Republicans lost major seats, governorships, everything all across the country. And so they should look themselves in the mirror and say, what kind of image does the party have right now, and how does that reflect in New Jersey? That's one thing. Secondly, in my experience, when Republicans win, they win economic issues, usually. It's the cost of living in the state and taxes and all of that. This time they're all off on other issues.
And your reaction, Governor Koorzine? Interestingly, some political pundits have said the Democrats did well because this time Governor Murphy wasn't at the top of the ticket.
Well, I think that I wouldn't buy into that. I think the governor is reasonably well regarded by the public this far into a second term, and I think his leadership of the Democratic Party and the leadership of the legislature has been strong. And as Governor Kane just said, Democrats were talking about affordability, and there were culture wars going on out of the campaigns on the other side, and that's a split that I think Republicans have across the country, and is the best benefit that I think Democrats could have.
Have the parties been successful at expanding those bases? In the Republican Party, has that been a priority since the last election, the last legislative election 2 years ago?
I think the Republican state chairman has been working on it, but it's difficult, and there's a lot of moving parts, and I think you've got to do more to expand that base, and I think where you have centrist, center-right candidates, they've done pretty well over the years in New Jersey, and say, well, Governor Murphy almost lost re-election to one of those kind of candidates, and I think that should be a message to the Republican Party, what at least large parts of the state are looking for.
There is one issue that I think is very dominant, almost as dominant as affordability, and that is reproductive rights. And I think you're going to hear that over and over again as we go into 2024. And it is a pretty strong, well, and in down ballot races too, because this is something that the majority of Americans, by almost any poll, feel strongly about. And I think many Republicans got the wrong position relative, particularly to women, who are a very, very important constituency, about 53% of the vote.
Well, do you think that influenced this election, in this legislative election?
It's a little less in New Jersey because I think most people accept that we're
more centrist, democratic
more centrist on this issue. But I think when some of the other cultural issues came up, I think that ends up bothering people that that's the case that's being made. I would certainly be playing that as a campaigner if I were out running.
People don't like to have their rights taken away. and that was a right that the Supreme
Exactly.
Court took away. But the New Jersey, it's a settled issue. I mean, we've been a right to choose state as long as I can remember, no matter who's Republican or Democratic governors. And even you get a Republican governor like Chris Christie, who was a right to life, I think, in his beliefs, he never touched the issue.
Right.
And so I think for the Republicans to allow that to become an issue in New Jersey is crazy. I mean, because
Would be a mistake.
it is, well, they did allow it to become an issue, and logically it's not an issue and shouldn't be an issue, and maybe it's an issue in Louisiana, someplace. It's not an issue in New Jersey, and so Republicans shouldn't allow the Democrats to allow them to make that issue.
Well, governors, this is always an interesting conversation. We always learn so much from hearing your perspectives, particularly on the office of governor in New Jersey, which you both served in. We appreciate your time. Thank you for being with us.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
Funding for Governor's Perspectives with Kent Manahan has been provided by NJM Insurance Group, serving the insurance needs of residents and businesses for more than 100 years. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, committed to helping Americans lead healthier lives and get the care they need. Seton Hall University, Seton Hall School of Law, and by Connell Foley, LLP.